Parak Hey, Meiser Karbonis. We're almost in Meiser Karbonis. That's good. That's real fun. The sugya that we discussed is frying jelly donuts, and if menachos are fried, and you're supposed to say amotzi on menachos, it says in brachos and in tosefta. So that means deep fried dough is technically a form of pas, right? Right. But a lot of poskim nowadays, which is very well based by the Rishonim and Achronim, who say deep fried jelly donuts are not they're not even possible to kissin, which is kind of weird. Why? They say it's deep fried. Deep fried is a form of bishul. But in the base of Mikdash, they deep fried things, and that wasn't considered tafshil, and that was considered lechem. Pas. So, kasha. Let's see here. We're talking about Issurei Mizbeach. We're talking about the Esnan, Zona, and Mechir Kelev, right? We talked about in Gufan. We got to which halacha? We said Mechir Kelev and Shnei Shutim. We got to the end of this Nishtana Mechir. Okay. I think we're up to, we got into the fifth parak even. We mentioned Seor and things like that. Okay. I have to read this thing. We're in the third halacha. Okay. We said there's different ways. I pointed out that the Machon Mamre didn't have the same text as we have. It left out two important words, l'shem eitzim. Remember that in the third halacha? It left out l'shem eitzim. You got off to that part, the third halacha? Yeah. Yeah, so we're past that. I know, but I need to read a part over here. Says this. Arrive at Havin, Kilafia Rambam, Kasher Asuro Dvashi, Inam Bashi, Inam Ba'im. Okay. The Ravid thought that the way the Rambam is formulating this, the Rambam's saying that if you just take a bowl of sourdough or I don't know, a cup of date honey and pour it on the Mizbeach into the fire, there's no chiyuv. That is, it's still forbidden to do so, but we will not punish a person for doing so. Why? Because I'm trying to find that one. We're going to be, I think, in the fifth pasuk. Okay. We're gonna start the fifth halacha. We're gonna start the fifth halacha. I'm just reading what the note says here about the Ravid. The point is that the Ravid thought that the Rambam was saying that just putting seor, just putting date honey on the Mizbeach in and of themselves, not mixed in with something else, a person wouldn't get lashed. And the Ravid says, no, if a person takes sourdough stam and burns it on his Mizbeach, or date honey stam and burns it on his Mizbeach, so he is to be lashed. He is violating an Isser. That's the way the Ravid understood it. But there are others who say, no, the Rambam agrees with that. The Rambam just didn't say it the way the Ravid says it, so there's room to misunderstand. But the Rambam also holds that if a person just takes seor and doesn't combine it with something else, or just date honey, it doesn't combine it with something else, he's still to be lashed. So we have here that the Rambam is talking about in the fourth parak. He says there are even certain things that aren't meant to be burned in the Mizbeach. Okay? There are certain things not meant to be burned in the Mizbeach, but because they're called korban, that if a person were to add seor davash to them and burn them on the Mizbeach, he'd still be lashed. So what are the examples of things that are called korban but not burned on the Mizbeach? He has a list. Ketzad, maleh b'basar chatas v'asham. The meat of chatas and asham, is that supposed to be burned on the Mizbeach? No. What are you supposed to do with the meat of a chatas and the asham? Give it to the kohanim to eat. And if it's puzzle, or if they're tmeim, there's no one to eat it, or it was brought betuma, like we said before. So afterwards, it's brought outside the base of Mikdash and burned, but it's not burned on the Mizbeach. Oh, mibsar kachim kalim. Kachim kalim, the meat of kachim kalim. What is to be done with that meat? Not burned on the Mizbeach. It's to be eaten. It's to be eaten within the walls of Jerusalem, like Korban Pesach. Oh, mishari menachos. Shari menachos is the parts of menachos that's not burned on the Mizbeach. The kometz is burned. Shari menachos is just the leftover flour. Well, most of the flour, and that's turned into bread, basically, for the Kohanim to eat every single day, right? Regular menachos. Mimosar ha'omer. Mosar ha'omer is the part of the omer that's also not burned on the Mizbeach, that's to be eaten by the Kohanim. That's for the second day of Pesach. Ome chatas ha'of. Chatas ha'of is eaten by who? That's a bird korban. It's not a olas oaf. Olas oaf is entirely burned. It's a pigeon or a dove that they're burning. But the chatas is eaten by the kohanim. Chatas ha'of is the only meat that Jews eat that doesn't have shechita. No, the dam. Okay. V'nimtza domo al kiram mizbeach, and then the rest is eaten. But no, he has to rip out the kishkas, but the meat of the korban is eaten. Basically, it's not an ola. It's just the usual parts of the mizbeach.
יש פעמים שכן מצמידים חמץ לגבי המזבח, זה דבר מאוד מאוד בסיסי, אני פשוט לא...
No, אין chametz al mizbeach.
מה זאת אומרת? החלות, בשתי הלחם?
Shtei alechem, they're eaten.
חלות תודה.
They're eaten.
Yeah?
Those are eaten by regular people. They're not on mizbeach. Ne'achalim. Okay. You have a case here. What was I going to say about it? You have to put salt in it. Okay. No, we'll get it. No. So what happens here? They actually malika. You guys remember what malika is? Malika is when the kohen pops the back of the neck with his thumbnail, right? That's not shchita. It's the opposite. If you do malika to a bird or any other animal for that matter that could have been kosher, you've made it treif. Okay, it's a nevela now. Now, if you the exception is that if you want to eat a pigeon or a dove, you'd have to do a regular shchita on it, correct? With a shchita knife. If you do malika to a pigeon or a dove in the base of mikdash and you're a kohen, that's now a chatas, and you can eat that. So there is nimla, that's called nimlakim, birds that get malika done to them. Those are kosher for the kohanim to eat, but only in the base of mikdash. We'll see the ma'aser korbanos. Next, lechem apanim.
So to a non-kohen, that he would be chayav in two Issurei. One eating kodesh, and another would be
a non-nishkat.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we'll have to see. That's a good question. Next one was lechem apanim ushtei alechem. Lechem apanim is to be eaten entirely by the kohanim. Shtei alechem is what's brought on. This is the bikurim. Lechem bikurim of Shavuos is not burned on the mizbeach. That's also meant to be eaten by the kohanim. Shtei alechem and lechem apanim. No, it's not matnos kuna. It's kachim. It's kachim. Yeah, it's only eaten. No, there's no chelek that goes to Jews. The lechem bikurim of Shavuos is not given by any Jew. It's not matnos kahuna because it never belongs to a regular Jew. Matnos kahuna are when I have a crop and I give some to the kohen. I have reshis agez and I give some to the kohen. I have a son and I give the pidyon to the kohen. Whereas shtei alechem, yeah, it's only given to it's baked in the base of mikdash and it's meant for the kohanim to eat. Period. It's not a matnos kahuna. It's like any other. It's like the sir chatas of Rosh Chodesh. That's not matnos kahuna. The sir chatas of Rosh Chodesh is eaten by the kohanim. Next. It says here the log shemen shel mitzora. The mitzora has to bring a log of shemen. He uses it for anointing purposes and it's his ritual purification. It's not meant to be put on the mizbeach. They turn it into other things, but they don't put on the mizbeach. Hamale kazayis me'echad me'elu b'chametzu b'dvash. So if he put just a kazayis of any of these things, just even a kazayis of one of these materials, and some seor and dvash. He just even started bringing it up to the kevesh. He is now to be, that's the ramp up to the mizbeach. He's to be lashed for doing this. Even though everything we just listed is not meant to be burned on the mizbeach, because it's called korban. Ho'il v'hein kurin korban, because the Torah calls them at certain points a korban. Yeah, chayav alehen. So he is chayav for that. No, Ravid doesn't cholik on this particular halacha. The Ravid was cholik on. The Ravid says even if you didn't attach the seor devash to any of these things, still getting local. Korban reishis takrivu osam laHashem. Okay, it says about these bikurim that is the fruit. Okay, seor and devash has a korban reishis. Okay, takrivu osam laHashem. Eventually, you do have to bring chametz and devash into the base of mikdash, but it says the rest of the pasuk says that they will not be a reach bicholach. You don't actually burn them on the mizbeach. So when do you bring seor? When do you bring chametz and honey as a korban? Bikurim. Bikurim is consists of dates and grapes, sweet stuff. So you bring that to the base of mikdash. Ma'aser bikurim. Bikurim is called the korban reishis. It's called the korban. Dates and grapes. Tamarim va'anavim. So those are like fruit. Those are sweet fruitness, especially the dates. But that's called a korban. Why? You give it to the kohen. The kohen eats it outside the base of mikdash. Or this other one, which is chametz. There is chametz brought to the base of mikdash, but never put on the mizbeach. What's the chametz brought to the base of mikdash? Lachmi toda. Yeah, so you can make a korban out of seor and dvash, but you can't make it on the mizbeach. That's the rule. Okay, which korbanos have seor, lachmi toda, and which korbanos have dvash, bikurim. Okay, but it's entirely eaten by the kohanim. That's actually a matnos kahuna. Not on Mizbeach. Absolutely not. Okay, the Mizbeach barely got anything that was actually. Yeah, kulam matzot. Yeah, unleavened.
Going back to the Rabbi, I'm just thinking that maybe the reason he understood the Rambam to be saying that only referring to mixing is that what the Gemara asked V'lama ein ma'arvin ba'devash. It doesn't say why don't you just put honey on, and he thought he was quoting that Gemara.
Yeah,
and that's all usually a lot of things that the Rabbi thinks that disagrees with the Rambam is that. He knows which Gemara, and he would quote it and say, "No, that's not what it's saying."
Yeah, a lot of these machlokas are just essential differences in reading the Gemara. Sometimes, by the way, it's girsa difference. Also, it's not that the Ravid had a bomb kashan on the Rambam; he just had a different girsa altogether.
Yeah, we found the case like that.
Yeah. Isn't that how? What is it? Who is it? You know that Rashi Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin is machlokas Rambam and Ravid. They read the Gemara differently. The Ravid says order your parshas differently than do it like Rabbeinu Tam says. He doesn't attribute it to Rabbeinu Tam. He apparently just had this other understanding of the Gemara, different than the Rambam. Havayos be'emsa. Yeah, that you don't read it like I do. How can you not read it this way? Okay, yeah, it's a good thing we learn these Gemaras. We should. Yeah. Yeah. Rashi Tosfos. No, so Rashi Rabbeinu Tam were first. Rambam was born after Rashi passed away. So there you go. So many people say that this is an old machlokes. Yeah, it's an old machlokes. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam and Ravid and Rambam were the first who disagreed with this. It's a machlokes already in Gonem's time, apparently. There's evidence that this was an early machlokes. I don't know Moshe Rabbeinu. I wasn't there. I don't think it's Second Temple era. From what I've seen, it's after the Churban it started this machlokes. But the point is, some machlokas are really old. The Vilna Gaon says just do Iker like Rashi. We do like Rashi or the Rambam. It says like Rashi and the Rambam, that's the Iker. That's the main one we do. And by the way, the Shulchan Aruch says the same thing. That's the Iker. So we're choshesh for some people are choshesh for it. Let's see the fifth halacha. The fifth halacha says, don't burn that which is not to be burnt. My own note. So let's see. It says, I'm in the wrong parak here. Sorry for those of you following us online. I'm sorry I had the wrong thing. It says we're in the fifth parak, the fifth halacha. There we go. Hamaktir every behema. No, v'chein asur. Sorry, over here. V'chein asur laktir al mizbeach davar mikol davarim elu she'enon ruim lahak Torah. Okay, it is forbidden, by the way, to burn on the mizbeach anything which is not meant to be burned. That's wasteful, by the way. Also, kigon b'sar chataot v'ashamot. The things that Rambam just mentioned in the previous halacha. If you have meat of a chatas and asham that the kohanim are supposed to eat, do not burn it on mizbeach. Ushar menachos, the part of the menachos, the flour that they're supposed to use to make cakes. By the way, cakes, I mean the way Sansino used the word cakes, matzoth cake. Okay, not like a chocolate cake. It means breads. Okay, you shouldn't. Those things are meant to be food, so don't burn them as be'ach. V'chayotza behen, everything else we mentioned. Mipiash mu'ad lamdu shekol davar shemiktzatzo la'ishim hareshi oto b'val taktiru. If you have anything where it says that this specific part of it should be burnt in the fire, then the rest of it is not meant to be burned. By the way, what part of lechem upon him is burned? If lechem upon him is, don't eat that. So what do they burn in lechem upon him? No. So they don't take challah because challah will be for the kohanim. No, and they don't do kamitza before they bake the lechem upon him. The lechem upon him are baked in the temple bakery and put straight onto the table. The answer is the bazichin, as Chazal call it. There's the cup of frankincense that was sitting on the table with the lechem upon him. And on Shabbos, when they would switch out the lechem upon him and distribute lechem upon him, they'd also burn that cup, ceremonial cup of frankincense on the Mizbeach. That's the part of that ritual that's burned on the Mizbeach. Make sense? Haktarsa bazichin. The bazichin, that's on Shabbos. The bazich, that's an Aramaic word. It's just talking about this ceremonial cup or bowl, whatever it is. Yeah, it was there the entire week, and then when on Shabbos they replace it and they finally burn it. Birshus Chem will have we'll have a drink of water. You guys need a drink, by the way? Everybody had everything? Everybody's cool? Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Um,
Should have told me
and,
that when the vegetarian guy was here.
doesn't really exist.
Well, it's okay. You should go. It's good to teach your kids that they're not being, they're not made different than everybody else. Thank God.
Yeah, I'll make sure that they wear the belt buckles. Make sure they wear everything. They're not really just as strange as they are.
Okay, so the Rambam just said an Isser over here, right? What about if someone violates this Isser? The Rambam doesn't say, is a person to be lashed for this Isser? It says burning something that's not meant to be burned. Is there lashes for this? The Rambam doesn't seem to hold that way, but I guess there's room that some would say he is to be lashed. Remember, this Isser in Halacha Hey is independent of the whole sword of Vash issue. So there's no specific, I think the Rambam is not saying he should be lashed. Why? Because there's no specific pasuk, and thou shalt not burn that which I told you to eat, or that which I didn't tell you to burn. So because it's a lav miklal asay, you're supposed to burn certain things and not others. So if a person were to burn the others, he is not to be lashed or punishment. Baal taktiru is suar and davash. Okay. Yeah, yesh isur keilu yesh isur mefurash b'Torah bal taktiru al taktiru kol mashe amur leheachel. Don't burn anything else, but there's no specific pasuk. Well, there's bal taktiru itself isn't a biblical word. Ein milim ka'ele b'Tanakh. Okay, lo saktiru lo sakrivu bal taktiru bal mazet bal. Bal's it aramit. Okay, so it's not a biblical expression. Let's go to the next halacha. Okay. Ooh, good. Every behema tmeya al gabi mizbeach. Every behema tmeya. Behema tmeya doesn't mean an animal that could have been kosher but has a trephus or a nevela or something improper slaughter. It means what we call a non-kosher animal species. Chas v'shalom, donkey. Okay. And by the way, this doesn't include, let's say, kosher animal but not fit for korban. Remember, there's only 3 mammals fit for korban. Whereas there are many animals and chayas, there are many behemoths and chayas and oifis that you can eat in this world, and many also sheretz hayam, lots of fish, and even some bugs that you can eat, but they're not called behema tameya. What's the quintessential behema tameya? Because I'll have a chamor. Okay, that's a behema, and that's a tameya. Al gam mizbeach loke. Person burns every behema tameya on the mizbeach, he is to be lashed. Even though, here, see the Rambam saying, really there's no pasuk which says, and don't burn on the mizbeach any animal that's a behema tameya, asher lo torahi. There's no such pasuk in the Torah. It's only implied. That is, you learn that you shouldn't do this because you have a mitzvah to only burn that which is kosher on the mizbeach. It tells you which tahoras you can eat, which tahoras you can bring as sacrifice. It doesn't actually say don't burn donkey on the mizbeach. So you would think there's no malchus for such a thing. Kamash malan there is. Ha tamea lo se'achiel lo sakriv. So it says, or lo tochal and lo sakriv. It says here a behema tamea. You're not supposed to eat, and you're not supposed to make into a korban. Keshem shelo ke al achilas tamea. Because it says explicitly the person is to be lashed for eating tamea. If you eat a behema tamea, you get malchus. Ba miklala say kemosha biranu bimkomo kach lo kol kravasa. Yeah, behema tmeya, and apparently behema tmeya in this case is very general. It means also a chaya and also a sheretz tmeya. Because if you eat a sheretz tmeya, you also get lashed. Kol chel sheretz tamei v'chayat tmeya. Filu megam sheketz kulam yesh malkus. As kol mash yesh malkus al chilasa gam yesh malkus al kravasa. L'masher Rambam mer. Yeah. Behemoth may in this case includes chayas. Okay, and if it includes chayas, then also includes shkatzim and ramasim and everything else. It's kind of interesting. So who asked it this week? Someone asked this week. Remember, the rabbi brought the Shadal's words. It says, "Uvasar ba basadetrifa lo socholenu la kelef tashlichu noso." The Shadal says there's certain things that God wants us to have a higher standard. Jews are not supposed to eat behema treifa. Treifa basadeh, throw it to the dogs. Why is this important? Because there's Musar from the Torah. Chazal said a person shouldn't say what? Oh, this is beyond me. I don't want those cheeseburgers. That's disgusting. Pork is disgusting. I would never eat that. You're not supposed to say it. You're supposed to say, I have Yitzhak horror for it. A cheeseburger actually sounds appetizing. That, get a nasha steak, that smells really good. I have an appetite. But what are you supposed to do? The Torah says I can't have it. That is true regarding certain prohibitions like basar b'chalav, and these non-kosher steaks.
Those eggs
Yeah.
that were while the mother is still present.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. But like Shadal was saying, sometimes there are certain non-kosher foods where you can actually say, yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Basar treifa, throw it to the dogs. That's disgusting. Or anything that the Torah said that's usser and is also what? Sheketz. To shaketsu. It means you should have an ichs to it. There are certain things. Milk and meat is not in that category. Pork is not in that category, despite the disgustingness of it. There are certain things you could say, I do not want to eat the bugs, not because the Torah says I'm not supposed to. What are we going to do? You're not supposed to eat the bugs because eating bugs is inherently disgusting. Like the Shulchan Aruch says in the halachas of the bugs and the rodents that fall into a mouse falls into the barrel of beer in the Hilchos Tarovis there in the Shulchan Aruch in Yoredea. What does it say? Dorm shenafsho shel adam katzabahem. There are certain things that are just inherently disgusting. So if they give no same Tom, it's still Tom live gum. Okay? It doesn't. They can't trafe up the beer barrel because they're disgusting. Certain things are disgusting. If you don't want to eat mice, you're not violating this precept of Chazal saying, oh, you're being too pious, saying, oh, I have no appetite for it. The Torah asked, what am I going to do? No, it's okay to actually say, I will not eat a rat. It's totally fine to go and say that. That's disgusting. And so too with other certain animals. Okay, just to clarify that. So let's see this. We're over here in Aval, the continuation of this halacha. Aval makriv every chaya tahora over ba'aseh v'enoloke. If a person brings chaya tahora on the mizbeach, in which case, let's say an animal that's kosher, but it's not fit for korban. Let's say a gazelle. Right? What's another animal that we use commonly that's the most kosher thing that people eat, but they're not supposed to bring on the mizbeach? Duck. Chicken. Yes, chicken. Person burns chicken on the mizbeach. So he is to be lashed. Why? He's not lashed. Over basei v'enoloke. U'minayin chu basei. Where's the asei? Shnemar min ha'beima min ha'bakar min hatzon takrivu. It says bring a korban from behema, bakar and tzon. If it's a chaya, you shouldn't bring, but that's just implied. It says bring a korban from behemoth. So if you bring a chaya, and also I guess ophos that you're not supposed to bring. So a gazelle or a giraffe, right? Every now and then they check the giraffe to show people it's kosher. Chazal said the koi is a suffix. Koi is a suffix, chaya or behemoth, right? What's the koi exactly? It's a machlokas in Mishneh even. What is a koi? Is it a suffix that's a mixed breed, or they just didn't know where to put it? Okay, in which category? Chaya or behemoth? Okay. And what were they even referring to? What is the koi? Which animal is it? Some wild buffalo of some sort? Who knows? Okay. Hagonevo agozel v'kriv hakorban pasul. A person stole something or robbed something from another person. What guys? Remember your Nezikin. What's the general difference between Genevo and Gazela? What? Well, I think it's with force. Okay, outright force. Because I'll say Vaigzola Sachanis Miata Mitzri. It says Benayahu ben Yoyada stole or robbed the Mitzri of his spear. He was wrestling the Mitzri warrior, and he just grabbed the spear out and turned the spear around on him. Geneva is any way you require the other person's property. You could Geneva for him when he's not looking. You could sneak into his house. You could cheat him out of it. The Geneva is multi-variable here. There's a lot of ways, and there's a lot of ways you could do it. Gazela is I walk over to you and I use force to take something out of your possession. Sometimes like armed robbery, or I could hit you and stuff and take away your coat, whatever it is. That's a Gazela. The point is, it's misappropriation of property against the halal. Okay, so a person did this hakorban pasul. Very good. That should make sense. Hava kadosh baruch hu kra'o sona'o. It says Vakadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, you have a word here. You guys have the word kira'o sono. I just have sono. Okay. What? Okay. So why did I say kira'o sono? In this case, there's a big nafkamina in these girsas. If you read it the way we have in the printed versions, it says God hates this person. By the way, it's an anthropomorphism. God doesn't hate anybody. God doesn't love anybody either. But we say that God loves, let's say, tzaddikim. God loves Am Yisrael, right? What does it mean that God loves us, by the way? That's an anthropomorphism. What does it mean that God loves us?
It's an actions that if the human would do it, it looks like love.
Yes. Or better yet, he gives us privileges. We get perks. Basically, God gives us perks. Okay? So that's that. I just said what you said in slang. Okay? And when God hates someone, that means that God is basically declaring this person as the opposite. He doesn't deserve things, and perhaps he should be punished. So if someone does something that may be based and supposed to intervene, but that means that God hates him. If you say kirao sono, that means God calls this person a hater of God. Okay? The person who does this hates God. And hating God, what does it mean to love God, by the way? Well, how do you show love for God? Like the Rambam says in Mada, he says in Sefer Mada, he explains how to love God, which is why he says the next book I'm going to write is How to Love God. How do you love God? Most basically, according to the Rambam, or demonstrate love for God. First, you have to develop love for God. How do you develop love for God? Come on, guys, review. Sefer Mada.
Exactly. You look at the creation.
You look up at the heavens. You look down with a microscope. You see how the cells and everything are so perfectly organized and display infinite wisdom. And you look beyond that with an electron microscope, and you could see molecules and other things. Not electron microscope is a little too big to see molecules, but you could see microscopic bugs, those tardigrades and all those other things, right? And you look even deeper, you can see quarks and other subatomic particles. And every level of magnification shows what? Infinite wisdom. And then you look above to the sky at night, and what do you see? You see galaxies. How many galaxies do you see? You see galaxies of galaxies. And when you contemplate the creation, you will come to have awe of God. Now will lead you to love of God. Good. Now we learned how to love God. Thank you, Rambam. How do you display your love for God? What are the actions that show love for God? No, the book of love. You keep God's commandments with your body. You wear your tzitzis and your tefillin. You make sure you're circumcised. You pray. Okay? You write a Sefer Torah. That is love of God. So what does it mean a person hates God? Who hates God, conversely? First of all, the person hates God because he has not taken the basic steps to even contemplate God. So you can't see God. You can only see what he has done in this world. So a hater of God doesn't even go in the first step. He might even see nature. And what happens? He sees nature. Oh, someone's here in the waiting room. Okay. God, the person doesn't look at nature, so he doesn't see God in nature. He just says, oh, yeah, the cell, that just happened. It just happened. And those galaxies up there, of which there are infinite number of them, and a universe that, from what we could tell, is 15 billion years old, which means how you do that because you can see distances. Okay, there's 15 billion light years of distance in the visible universe, which is no small change. You look up a thing like that and you realize that just happened. So that's not going to lead you to love God. Eventually, you'll come to hate God, which means you will deny his existence, you will not perform commandments, and you will even do averas. So that means you hate God. So one of the easiest ways to demonstrate this, that a person just does not care about God. He doesn't see God in creation. He doesn't acknowledge the master of the house, is by doing what? Stealing something, committing the most basic avera. The most basic avera we say is stealing. Why is that? Because, like I said last week, Sheva mitzvahs. Goyim are held accountable for the Sheva mitzvahs. Why? Because they're supposed to already, by the time they're adults and they're thinking and they're rational, they should know that stealing is forbidden. So if they should eventually get around to, by the way, murder, adultery, idolatry, those are all usher also. But the first thing that we learn as children is not to take someone else's stuff. That's the first isser that man feels as a child, and that man is supposed to learn not to do, even as a child. Children, it's kind of hard. I don't expect kids growing up, God knows where, at the age of 6, if their parents don't have even the most basic, slightly Noahide religion, they're not going to teach them, like Avram Avinu, acknowledge that there's a God, a creator, and thank him for what you have. That's a little bit, I guess high school level learning. But already kids in nursery should be taught what's theirs and, respecting other people's property. So that's the most basic isser. So if a person actually steals, that which is not his, and then wants to bring it to God and say, "Here, God, I'm bringing forth, this an offering." So God, that person is showing that he hates God. Okay.
Well, I thought you still love God as long as it's up to $950 in worth in San Francisco County.
Okay, well, those people are pretty bad. The point is, you see the nafkamina between that God hates him and God calls him a hater of God. Okay, so there's two deep theological lessons here. How you read it. The point is, there's a hatred going on here. Shnemar sonei gazel bi'olah. God hates what? God hates that there's thievery in the burnt offering. That is, a person used the thievery to acquire that which he then brought as a korban. Pretty bad. And of course, you should know that God doesn't accept such a sacrifice. It's not ola reach bicholach. It's not nirtza. It can't be. Technically speaking, now let's go back to Nezikin. A person stole, and now the thief has made an acquisition on this property. Yes, he still is obligated to make restitution, and probably restitution beyond that which he actually stole. Then there might be a knas involved. He'll pay more than the value of what he stole. But once there's yush on the part of the person from whom this property has been stolen, technically speaking, that which is stolen is now property of the thief, right? So he took it from Rishus Bailim, and then he has a yush. So now it's his. So now it's technically kosher. It still is not right. Even if we're talking about an animal, a chatas that the Kohen would eat. If this sheep was stolen, and eventually the victim had yush. Yush, by the way, is he gave up on hope on getting it back. So now this is not considered stolen to the extent that it's invalid. Still wrong, and the thief still has to, like I said, make restitution, but it doesn't disqualify this animal. However, umipnei takanas mizbeach, you guys takanas mizbeach, takanas hamizbeach. Okay, just takanas mizbeach. Okay, just make sure the gears is there. The sages said that if you have a chatas gazula, it means this animal was stolen once upon a time. Can't make it into a chatas. Im no da ala rabim. If people know about this animal had been stolen. Eina mechaperet. It does not atone. Disqualified. Afal pish and if Yashua belim. Even though we know that the original owners gave up hope of ever getting this back. There was yush involved, technically, but the sages made a rule. Kadesha lo yomru mizbeach ochel gazelot. Why? So that people would say that the mizbeach accepts stolen property, so to speak. Mizbeach ochel. They're personifying. They're anthropomorphizing mizbeach. Look, there was during the early Maccabean times, there was one renegade princess who kicked the mizbeach, called the mizbeach what? Lupus, which means wolf. You're eating up the karbanos and you're wasting people's money. So the Mizbeach is personified sometimes as something that eats. Sometimes the Mizbeach is compared to a living being that eats on its own, like here. Sometimes the Mizbeach is compared to what? God's table. Even though God has a table in the base of Mikdash, he puts his bread on his table. That's his shulchan. It also says in the Navi that God's Mizbeach is like God's table, so to speak. And then Chazal said that when Kohanim get their priestly portions, it's like they're eating off of God's table. Which there's an awkward thing and say, so every table is therefore a mizbeach. That's not what Chazal were saying. That's a later Jewish folk belief, right? Don't sit on a table because the table is like a mizbeach. Technically speaking, yes, the table of the tzaddik, when you have a person who eats in sanctity, so his feeding the tzaddikim is like offering a korban, but not every table is like that. What?
And also in the Chaos vote about talking words of Torah.
Yeah. That's a shulchan before Hashem. That's similar to what we saw where just at the beginning of what we were talking about now. Okay, the Netziv says that you have people sit around the table, so that's what it means. But that doesn't mean every single table. That's talking about the table of the people who love God, tzaddikim. Doesn't mean if you have a table of Rishayim. So that's not a mizbeach. An astam table anywhere in the world, or a table that's meant for books, even this table, which is not a table meant for eating. So we don't have that. We don't eat Shabbos meal here. However, not this table. By the way, these tables are used for Shabbos meal. When? Shabbos morning, they set up these tables and they have kiddush here. They sit down, they have kiddush, they come and eat food, and they stay here for like 2 hours. Okay, so I guess maybe it is a thing. Okay. All right, let's see. Which halach are we up to? Okay, v'chagonev olas chavero v'kriva stam. He stole his friend's ola. Let's say his sheep. He was going to make this into a burnt offering, and he brought it as a korban. Here you go, korban. And this kapru ba ba'alim arishonim. So who does it work for? It works for the original owner. The thief gets no credit for bringing a korban. The owner, who was supposed to have brought this as a korban, it atones for him, which teaches you every korban. The main part of every korban is the kapara, even if it's not a chatas and asham. It's a form of kapara. It says v'nir tzolol chaper lov. That's talking about the ola, and also as an aspect of the shlamim. There's only one korban which has no aspect of kapara, and that is korban pesach, which is dafka meant for eating. Nope, those are all forms of kapara, which is nafkamina that they can't be eaten betuma. But the korban pesach, because it's meant for eating and not for kapara, is eaten afilu betuma. Yeah. The Netziv is. I found that the Netziv is the first one to explicate this idea. Rav Kook, who learned from the Netziv, also says it a few times, and it's a highlight of the Haggadah there. Okay, get your copy now if you haven't gotten a copy already. But we have the new guy. Echrim lecha. Yehuda. Give me a Haggadah of Pesach, please. We're going to teach you. We're going to introduce you to something because we have to have a word from our sponsor. Usually by the way, stam, word from our sponsor means word from my father. Okay, that's the general rule. Here, have you ever been to Korban Pesach before? You had a seder, Siddhartha Pam, Bli Korban Pesach. Okay. Mata se Ashana. Bezrat Hashem nakriv Korban Pesach. Mata se. What are you going to do? Yeah. Vade. No, Leil Seder. Mata se kfar b'Leil Seder. So green Beit HaMikdash. You already go home. Go home at night. Time to eat your Seder. What are you going to do at the Seder? Yeah. Okay. Which Haggadah are you going to use? No, Chas v'Shalom. You can't use the old Haggadah. The old Haggadah tells you to do this Seder. When Korban Pesach's on the table, you have to do it differently. There's certainly, you can't invite people to the Seder. Kol dichvin yes v'yechol, they're not menuyim. You can't do that. You need a different Haggadah. You need this. Here. No. Chas v'Shalom, no. That's why you need this. Tiftach v'tistakel. Oh, krata kricha ha'achorit. Kricha ha'achorit, no, milsof. Yeah. Zilfiat Seva, yeah. And also nuschos of brachos are different. Yeah, shonot. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot that's different. Yeah. What do you say at the end of Magid? Asher giladu v'galalas avosenu. Okay. V'gyanu alayel zeh lechol Pesach matzu maror. Okay. You're going to say Kein Hashem yagienu l'sasim smechim b'vinyan yachsasim lo lecha al gulasenu. You can't say that part anymore. The Rambam says you don't say that. You have to say a different bracha. You have to say modim anachnu l'cha gulasenu. L'shon hoveh. In Korban Pesach. Yeah, that's why you need this Haggadah. Yeah. Al Geula Seino. Gaal Yisrael. L'shon Avar. Geulas Mitzrayim. Afilu lifnei shana kishelo nigalnu adayin ma birachnu gaal Yisrael l'shon avar yanachnu modim al geulat Mitzrayim. Good. Then chasima nisheres. Okay, so you need a copy. That's 60 shekels or 2 for 100. 60 shekels, please. Shishim shkalim. Oh, shtayim b'meah. No, Haggadah. Every faithful Jew needs a copy of Haggadah Pesach only because this year, God willing, we'll have Korban Pesach, and you won't be ready if you don't have the Haggadah. It tells you what to do. And as we said before, if you go to a Seder without Haggadah Pesach and you bring your Maxwell House or your art scroll, whatever it is, it'll tell you to do the wrong things. We'll have more about this, God willing, when we finish tonight's year. Next. Halacha tet. Ein mivim menachos and nesachim v'lo min hatevel. What's tevel, everybody? Menachos and nesachim are what? Menachos is what? Meals made out of korban's made out of flour. Meal offerings. Meal means stuff that's milled. Okay, and nesachim are yain. You can't bring that from tevel. What's tevel? Yeah, not non-tithe. They like to say, even though tithing includes the truma. Okay, a person has his crop. He has to take out some for the Kohen and some for the Levi and some for, I guess, himself and some from the Levi for the Kohen. And if it's the third year or the sixth year, instead of for himself, for the poor, makes you, I would have said the other way. Every year, just give to your poor and don't give to yourself. Kamash Balan, Chazal saw that Hashem wants us more often to have holy food that's ours to eat. Why? The Kohanim every year get the fruit, get the Bikurim to eat, right? They get to sanctify, they get to elevate the crops, right? So too, just like we occasionally eat of the korbanot also, the korbanot of animals, so too we should be able to eat of the korbanot of the, we should also be able to eat of the elevated fruits, the tzomchim, that the vegetables that we bring to the Beis HaMikdash. So you're also supposed to eat Meiser Sheni. That's what Meiser Sheni is all about, that you have a chance to eat also like the Kohanim do, okay? Shemen is menachos. Okay? Yeah. V'lo min hatevel. You shouldn't have it from the tevel. It means if you haven't tithed it yet, taken out the truma and the meiser, etc., so you shouldn't bring that as a korban. V'lo min hachadash kodem omer, or from the new grain crop before the omer is offered on the second day of Passover. V'lo min ha miduma. What's miduma? That is regular crops, regular food, into which truma has fallen. So now it's batul in there. What? Miduma. Miduma. It's mentioned in the Mishneh. No, it's not. Okay. Miduma. Shoresh dalad mem ayim. Okay. L'damea. It means from tears. By the way, it's the shoresh dema. Okay. So dema is tears. Mashi yored atipot me melach. Miduma. I don't know. L'damea. I don't know. Okay. Well, miduma means that which has been corrupted, basically. You have truma fell into it. It's a tarovis of truma. It's not entirely truma. It could be just a little bit of truma, but it makes the whole thing a tarovis that's forbidden. Okay, miyut shel klal. Okay, so what does it have to do with tears? Echad mimea? I don't know. Timaot, I don't know. I don't know. I should have looked into this. Hopefully someone will give us an answer. Why is it l'damea? Okay, because dim'ah and this is a real biblical shoresh, but I don't see the connection. Okay, maybe Steinzold says it. Sorry, Kahati is saying about it. I now remember. Maybe there's something in Kahati. Which has in there Trumas? Maseches Trumas there. So it's a few places in Zerayim. Okay, next. Ve'ein tzarich lomar me orla v'chila kerem. And of course, you're not allowed to bring these minachos and nesachim from what? Orla. Orla is the fruit from the first 3 years. Good thing Tu B'Shvat just happened. How do you count the first 3 years? That's a complex halach. We'll get into that, God willing. The fruit from the first 3 years, or kilei kerem. Kilei kerem is mixed breed. What is it? You have a grapevine growing there, and there's grain growing with the grapevine. So that turns that into an Isser Hana. Okay? Remember? You guys ever have this? My plumber friend would tell people, a lot of people here have grapevines that almost grow wild, and grains grow wild here in the land of Israel. Nowadays, you see some grass sprouting somewhere. It looks like regular grass. It's going to grow into these wild grains. Like my yard. My yard is basically a grain field. Right now, it's starting to sprout. And if I would not mow the lawn, then by Nisan time, it's actually stalks of grain. Have you seen that? That's pretty cool. I remember seeing this for the first time. I was like, oh, wow. But I have to cut it because, why? Because it's a hazard to the children. Okay. So, yeah, you can have snakes and stuff in there. So you get rid of that. Either way, kilei kerem, that's a Isser Hana. Mipnei shehi mitzvah ba ba'avero. Using kilei kerem for minach, for like the sachim is mitzvah ba ba'avero. Shakadosh Baruch Hu sone'ah. God hates that too. Okay? Or what does he have here in the, what does the Machon Mamre have? Hakadosh Baruch Hu sone'ah. Yeah, he says the same thing. It didn't call it hated. It just says straight up hated. Okay. V'im hevi. Let's say he brought from these menachos. Lo niskachu liotan ruin lekorban. They still don't become sanctified and fit for sacrifice. Aval niskad shuli pasel. They are only considered sanctified to the extent that they can now become pasul. V'yu kachim nifsalu. So they automatically become kachim that are now disqualified. Okay, so there's what to do with those, but you don't bring them on this Mizbeach. They'll never become fully qualified. Kol menachos ein mevinosan min achadash. Okay, all the menachos we don't bring them from the new grain crop, except kodem shtei lechem lachat chilo. Shtei lechem is not the omer on Pesach. Shtei lechem is the offering on Shavuos. So really, they want to eat the land till Shavuos. So right now, marbahen bikurim, the lechem of Shavuos, that's bikurim. That's the first ones. Ve'im hevi kosher, but it's because after the omer, which is on Pesach already, technically speak they're kosher. Mevin the sachim min amuktzeh b'yontif. How do you read this? There's two ways. Mevin the sachim, you could bring wine offerings from the muktzeh of yontif. What's muktzeh of yontif? Rambam's a very specific definition. Rambam says, unlike what you have in, let's say, our common halacha books, when you're not supposed to handle things on Shabbos, the Rambam doesn't call that muktzeh. He just says isser tiltul. Okay? You and I call the hammer and the pen and the shechita knife, we call those muktzeh, and rocks and sticks, we call those muktzeh, right? Rambam calls them isser tiltul. Isser tiltul. Rock biyom tov yeshin yan shel muktzeh. The chiddush shel Rambam. Rambam says muktzeh is a very specific group of isser tiltul. Things you're not supposed to handle on Shabbos and Yontif. It only exists on Yontif. It's the things that a person set aside and said, I ain't going to touch these all Yontif for whatever reason. So that's muktzeh. It's not talking about muktzeh, which means the grapes that a person put on the roof to dry. That's a different type of muktzeh. Okay. One more time. The definition is what you and I call muktzeh on Shabbos, which is a lot of different things. Muktzeh machmas chisar kis, muktzeh machmas mius, muktzeh machmas whatever. All different things. Eitzim avonim. Rambam says that just isser tiltul. Yeah, Isser Tiltul on Shabbos. Isser Tiltul, a lot of different reasons for it. Eitzim Avonim have no shimush. The pen because it's Malachtu Isser. The Shechita knife because it's Chisches Rukis. But there's all these categories, but he doesn't call them Muktzah. He calls them Isser Tiltul. And the Rambam says, B'Yontif. He says, no. On Yontif, there's a new category of Isser Tiltul, and that's the Muktzeh. Okay, he says, so, no, that's no lot. He says that which you don't want to use on Pesach, on Yontif. If you had, let's say, my neighbor has a store. He doesn't sell stuff on Yontif. He says, I ain't going to touch this on Yontif because I have to sell this. And then, let's say, on Yontif in his house, he runs out of meat. So he has a whole store with a big freezer with frozen meats. So we'll go and take from that. Or a person has the cow that he is not going to slaughter. The bull, he's not going to slaughter. He uses for certain things. He isn't going to touch that bull. And before Yontif, you already said, I ain't going to touch that bull on Yontif. Why would I do that? So that's considered a muktzeh. Okay? This is right at the beginning of, I think it's just because we mentioned this, we should read this right at the beginning of Hilchot Yontif. It's in the first paragraph of Hilchot Yontif where the Rambam says it's very surprising. It's worth it because we'll even make a new video about this. Should I show it to you guys? It's worth seeing. This is something, you guys learning Shabbos or Yontif in yeshiva? This is a real doozy of a. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh good. So you should know the Rambam throughout Hilchos Shabbos only refers to Isser Tiltul, and it's in Hilchos Yontif where he brings up the idea of muktzeh. It's a very surprising halacha if you've learned. We learn things out of order. You know why? We learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and then we learn Shulchan Aruch. We're learning backwards. We learned the Rambam first. In Yontif, I'll read it to you.
I had this conversation with you on the other day that there's probably not a single topic you can think of that going through the Rambam on that said topic will give you less knowledge than the average person through the standard yeshiva education would have.
Here, listen to this halacha, surprising halacha for those of us not learning Rambams. Kol she'asur b'Shabbos, bein mishum shum domim malacha o mevi lidei malacha. Okay, whether it's like a malacha. Rambam says there's two gezeros on Shabbos, things that could bring you to do a malacha, and things that are like a malacha, and they're both prohibited on Shabbos. Two different reasons for an isser, right? No, we're not there yet. Bein mishum shavuot ze asur b'yom tov. If it's asur on Shabbos, asur on Yontif. Shavuot is captivity. Shavuot is desist from the shoresh Shabbos. Okay, Shavuot grammatically is the shoresh shin bet hey, and Shavuot is the shoresh shin bet tough. Shabbos. Okay, it's Shavuot. Isser Shavuot. Yeah, the Shavuot like Shevi, Balchu b'Shevi, Ushvei Shevyacha ben Avi Noam. And the tough is only there because of the silent hey at the end of the short. So like la'asot, the shorish is ayin, sin, hey. Okay? So there's an afkamina. Ze aser b'yantif. That's aser b'yantif. Elim kein ayabo tzorech achila v'chayotzi ba. Or tzorech achilas nefesh. Anything that's for achilas nefesh, that's mutar on yantif. Shem mutarim b'yantif. She's bar v'ilchos elu. We're going to explain what it means. You can cook on yantif, etc. V'chol she'aser l'taltalo b'Shabbos, Isser tiltal on Shabbos, aser l'taltalo b'yantif. You also can't handle on yantif. Ela l'tzorech achila, unless it's tzorech achila. The shechita knife. V'chayotze v'chol shemuter b'Shabbos, muter b'yantif. And if there's anything that you can handle on Shabbos, you can handle on yantif. V'yesh b'yantif ma she'ein b'Shabbos. On yantif, there's something, a unique isser that's not on Shabbos, and that is isser muktzeh. Muktzeh. Shall muktzeh usser, hold on, I'm missing a word here. Usser b'yantif, umutter b'Shabbos. Muktzeh is usser on yantif and mutter on Shabbos. What does that mean? Muktzeh is mutter on Shabbos according to the Rambam? No, it doesn't mean what you think. Mipnei sheyom tov kal mi Shabbos asrubo hamuktzeh. Because yantif is already more makel than Shabbos, there's only malchus and not skila. And there's a lot of malachas that you could actually do. You could cook. The Chazal made more of a geder on yontif, so you don't bizalz on yontif. Shemivo lizalzubo, ketzan. Tarnagos omeres legado beitzim. He has an egg chicken. This is his chicken that lays eggs. Why would I slaughter this chicken? Then I wouldn't have eggs. Okay? Vishorha omed lacharisha, the example I gave. That's my ox I used to plow. I can't kill that cow. I'm not going to kill that on yontif. I need him for after yontif. V'yone shovach, the pigeons in the dovecote. Okay, as pigeons, you ain't going to eat them. Uferos omdim l'schora, or the peros, which is lav dafka peros, but the food that he's going to sell. Like I said, my neighbor's store, he locks up the store on yontif. He isn't going to go and touch that stuff. Kol elu v'chayotz behem muktzah. That's muktzah. That's a type of muktzah, which means. So that's mutter and Shabbos. I'll say in a second. That means my neighbor has apples and bread in his store. If he runs out of apples and bread in his house on Shabbos, so he opens up the store, because the store isn't muktzah, he walks into the store and takes apples and bread. Yeah. So just say that on Shabbos, of course you couldn't slaughter them, but you're not supposed to, there's an isser to them. You can't, on Shabbos, it's not the same isser. For example, if you need to kill an animal, let's say, for whatever reason on Shabbos, so it's better not to take the muktzeh. Okay? You could just, there's no such thing as muktzeh on Shabbos. It doesn't exist. There's no category on Shabbos. Rambam says it's a specific category. You could kill your ox on Shabbos, on Yontif. How do you kill your ox? You want to eat it. You can kill your chicken on Yontif. You want to eat it. On Shabbos, there is no such thing. But this is the nafkamina that he said. Okay, yeah, so he says, Aval b'Shabbos, hakol muchan etzel Shabbos, ve'eno tzar chachana. So for whatever reason, if let's say the ox died, if the ox dies on Shabbos, so feed it to your dogs. The ox dies on Yontif, it's muktzah. You can't feed it to your dogs. Okay, it doesn't need achana. Uchshem shamuktzah aser b'Yontif kacha nolad aser. So nolad is a different category of isser tiltul, but they also exist on Yontif. So what we call muktzah, the Rambam calls isser tiltul. We say muktzah. A lot of things are muktzah on Shabbos. Just saying that's not the way the Rambam has it. Okay, yeah, and there's so yes, we have to learn to say things like the Rambam. Hold on one second. Well, it seems both. Okay. Yeah, you're not allowed to touch that sword. Yes. Yes. Instead, if you intend to eat fresh meat on Yontif, what you're supposed to do is, there's a whole Mishneh about this. You want to eat birds on Yontif, you're supposed to go to the bird house before the dovecote, the shovach, before Yontif and say, I'm going to eat this bird on Yontif, and I'm going to shech this bird. And if you want to eat chicken on Yontif, nowadays, how do we eat chicken on Yontif? We take it out of the freezer or the refrigerator because we bought it before Yontif. It's already dead. But in the olden days, when they wanted to eat chicken on Yontif, by the way, Jews always ate chicken. Okay? That was what Chazal ate. Tarnagolim have lived among Jews. That's where they got their eggs from. Okay, Jews have been eating chicken forever. So when they wanted to eat fresh chicken on Yontif, what would they do? They'd shech the chicken on Yontif. But we don't do that. But on Shabbos, there's no such thing anyways. It's just that the point is, when they came to pick a chicken to slaughter on Yontif, they did not take the chicken that was there for laying eggs, because that was the muksa chicken. Okay? And v'chein kol kayotz b'zeh, and also the nolad egg. That whole thing about beitza shenolda is more of halacha when do Chazal discuss nolad? Hilchos Yontif, which by the way brings up a thing. We could look into this. Snow on Shabbos, they say it's like nolad, right? So there's some who basically read into this. Someone should correct me if I'm wrong. That nolad isn't as usher on Shabbos. It's not the same thing as we say nolad. There's some say the Rambam saying nolad is something specific to Yontif. Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's called Yontif. Yeah, that's the whole reason. That's beitza b'shenolda b'Yontif, not neitza shenolda b'Shabbos. Yeah. What nine afkamina would be, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong here, would be that if you want to just eat the egg on Shabbos, the egg is without cooking, Rocky style. You want to drink the egg because you're working out. Okay, so that's not us. That's not us or on Shabbos. Okay, pretty surprising, right? That's that whole discussion. Some extend it nolad to Shabbos, but if you read it straight Rambam, you can have room to eat nolad on Shabbos. Okay, enough of digression. So now we understand the Rambam uses lo machshavosai machshavosechem v'lo darchechem derachai ne'um Rambam. Okay, Rambam's not like other halacha books. That wasn't that funny. But I don't think it's a chiddush. You can get this. The Rambam didn't make this up. You know, there's the other. You could find this also. Apparently, this is this the whole thing of hachana also. We saw, guys. Remember? Did you guys learn that sugi about hachana and eruvin? I put in the book to show you because I was showing the rabbi here that the Rambam holds with regards to the 2-day yontif, the Yom HaRichta dummy. That's the kula and the chumrah. And the kula. There are kulas that come out of Yom HaRichta dummy when you have 2-day Rosh Hashanah in the Gullus, because here it's all there's no 2-day Rosh Hashanah, is there? Whatever it is. In the Gullus they have 2-day Rosh Hashanah.
Sometimes there was 2-day Rosh Hashanah in Yerushalayim.
Even in Yerushalayim they had 2-day Rosh Hashanah when the Beis Din did not have a chance to do Kiddush HaChodesh in the right time. Yes. So the point is that they have this idea that that there's hachana on Shabbos and hachana on Yontif. Ain't Shabbos making the chol, right? So the Rambam doesn't have ein Yontif meichin lachavero. Period. The Rambam, aside from the fact that it seems that if you have an eruv tavshilin, you could prepare on both days of Rosh Hashanah for Shabbos. One of the kulas that comes out of Yom HaRichta is that you could prepare on Rosh Hashanah day 1 for day 2. In Bavel and in New York, you could prepare according to the Rambam and the Rif. The Rambam Valrif, mutar lehachin miyom tov lechavero bimyuchad b'Rosh Hashanah. He's a Yom HaRichta lekula. Asur. Yeah. Yom HaRichta rak lechumra heimomrim. Erev Tavshilin. Also, if you're doing Erev Tavshilin, either day of Rosh Hashanah you could use for cooking for Shabbos. Yom HaRichta dami. Thursday, Friday are both one day, so you can both prepare for Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch says if you make an Erev Tavshilin, don't cook on Thursday, Yontif Rishon. Do the cooking on Yontif Sheni, Friday. Okay. However, according to the Rif of the Rambam, also anytime you have Yontif Sheni, Yontif Meichin Lechavero. So first day of Shavuos, I could cook for the second day of Shavuos. Many say wait until the first day of Shavuos is over before you cook for the second night of Shavuos, right? But according to the way the Rambam has it, point out Rav Kapach and others, you could prepare on the first day of Yontif for the second day of Yontif. Yeah.
That's not Yom HaRichta.
That's not Yom HaRichta, but the line in the Gemara, Ein Yontif Meichin Lechavero, to them doesn't exist in their Girsa. Vilgon points this out. Yeah. I have it the booklet. I showed you the booklet, the first book, Halu B'Tikach of the outtakes from the Haggadah of Pesach has a thing about this. Okay, all these amazing kulas that are in the Girsa of the Rambam, as pointed out by the Gra. We said it earlier yesterday. The Gra shows you a lot of times. Yeah, the Rambam has a Girsa here, which is the Yerushalmi Girsa. By the way, when they bring that up, the thing with the Vav Onos and the Gimel Onos, the Shulchan Aruch says very clearly what the Shulchan Aruch says. The Vilna Gaon just says, and by the way, the Rambam has a different Girsa, like Yerushalmi. What's the Vilna Gaon hinting to you?
Yeah,
like he has on his glosses. The Vilna Gaon's Gemara has correct this to make this vav, it should be a gimel. The Vilna Gaon's endorsing the Rambam posketing like Yerushalmi's girsa. So the Vilna Gaon points out, this whole thing, this complicated sugi about the Eruvin and Yom HaRichta and Yom Tov Me'echad Chavero. The Vilna Gaon points out what the Rambam's girsa and the Rif's girsa is. Wink, wink. Okay, what's the Vilna Gaon hinting at? It's quite clear what he's hinting at. That these kulas are very well based. Perhaps even that's the correct girsa. Okay, back to this. Those are fun sugyas, you should know. Hold on a second, so we don't get disconnected. Let me just make sure we have power. Okay, we're online. What are we up to? Yud Aleph. Wasn't this? We're the fifth parak over here. Mitzvah to say. There's the mitzvah of salt. Okay, be very careful with this. There's some it says explicitly, some it just implied. So we'll see what the Rambam is talking about. Mitzvah to say limloach kol karbanos. Got to salt all their karbanos. How do you salt them? So they had a lot of salt in the Beis Hamikdash. Kodem sheyalu lemizbeach. Before we bring it up to the mizbeach, salt the korban. Shneimar al kol korbanecha takriv melach. Where's the Rosh Kol, by the way? Where's everybody? Saying wrong. I told this guy that there'd be a whole party here, and no one's shown up. Al kol korbanecha takriv melach. It says in the Torah, upon all your korbanos, bring salt. So you have to put salt all the korbanos. There's nothing put on the mizbeach without a little bit of salt. There's only three things they don't salt. The wine, before you pour the wine on the mizbeach, you don't have to put some salt in the bottle. The blood is poured on the mizbeach right at the beginning. They receive the blood. The kohen doesn't salt the blood before doing that. And the wood they arrange on the mizbeach in order to burn on the korbanos is also not salted. Davar zeh Kabbalah. Really, this is a tradition. It doesn't say in the Torah, but don't salt these three things. Vein lo mikra lismochala. I can't prove this from any pasuk. It's not implied. There's no medrash. Just Chazal told us. These are the three things that we do not salt before burning on the mizbeach. U'mitzvah limloach habasar yafeh yafeh kimoleach basar letzli. The Rambam uses the same halachas in shchita. When he talks about salting meat in order to draw out the blood, he also says salting it yafeh yafeh. And he also talks about roasting. As you know, meat that you intend to eat barbecued and roasted over a fire does not need malicha to remove the blood. You just salt it normally for seasoning, okay? But the tzliya removes the blood also. It's tzliya or malicha. According to the Rambam, lo mi biglal alcha ela derech eretz. Tzrichim limloach. Okay, because basar levishul, that's a lot more. Then it can't be eaten. The halacha says for salting meat in order to remove the blood for bishul, you have to salt it so much that you can't eat it in that state before you wash off that salt. It has to be so salty you can't eat it. That's the amount of salting. If you just salt it seasoning like for a korban or for roasting, that's good. That's yummy. You guys eat steak, right? Every decent man eats a steak once in a while. Well, how are you supposed to properly season the steak? With salt, garlic, and black pepper, or at least salt. You need a certain amount. If you had no salt on your steak, it wouldn't taste good, right? So too, you have to salt it nicely, salt the meat properly so that it tastes good. The salting that we used to remove the blood, like we discussed 2 weeks ago, that's a lot saltier. That they coat it with salt, and then they hang it and they let it, or they put in a perforated vessel so that all the blood comes out. If you would salt your steak so much that you're making stuff come out of it, then you're ruining your steak. Okay? This is not sliya to remove this is not salting to remove the blood. He flips it over, also puts some salt on the bottom. Vim malach kolshehu, just the kolshehu, mashu, right? Afilu begargar melech echad kasher. 1 grain of salt is enough. Okay? Supposed to do it derech eretz, but 1 grain of salt is enough to salt the korban. Hikriv below melach klal lokeh. He brought this part of the sacrifice without any salt. He has to be lashed. So that means a piece of let's say the korban tamid. He brings the foreleg of the korban tamid without salting it. He has to be lashed. Ne'emar v'lo tashbith melach berith Elohecha. Says, do not stop or desist from bringing the salt of your God's covenant. Melach brit Elohecha, not melach brit Elohecha. It's the salt of your God's covenant. Okay. Even though he is to be lashed for leaving out the salt, the korban still counts. It is accepted. By the way, hurtza means he wouldn't have to bring a makeup korban. Let's say it was a chatas. The chatas is not hurtza, so he'd have to bring another chatas, right? Didn't count. Chutz min mincha. If the mincha is not salted, shamelach me'akev b'kmitza. The melach of the kmitza, the part of the mincha that goes in the kohen's hand, he picks out some with his fingers like this. He burns that on the mizbeach. If that doesn't have salt, that doesn't count. Kemoshi is bar shneimar v'lo tashbit melach bridohecha me'al minchasecha. When it said, and do not leave out the salt from the korban, it was talking specifically about the mincha. So a mincha. Makriv, what? No. Okay, but the mincha has to have salt on it to the extent that if the mincha didn't have salt after the fact, the mincha is not kosher. But the regular korbanos that don't have the salt, they're still kosher after the fact. Okay, very important mitzvah. This salt, where they used to get salt in the olden days? Did they mine it? Sometimes they mine salt, and what's the other way to get it? The milchia of Chazal. What do? They channel seawater into a ditch and just let it dry out in the sun. Then they gather the salt from there. So. Okay, yes, they could see my application. And sometimes what they used to do, they used to have, or they would just mine it. Nowadays, we get both. Okay, yeah, same. Salt mining or salt drying hasn't really changed that much. The science hasn't changed much in the last few thousand years. The salt that they use for the korbanot has to come from public funds, right? Just like the wood. The wood comes from public funds. This last halacha in Hey. A person cannot bring salt or wood for his korban from his house. That is, we allow a person to bring his own goat, let's say. He make a korban of a goat. Good, bring your own goat. The mitzvah has to bring olive oil. Bring your own olive oil. A person even wants to bring wine for his korban. He could bring wine. But he cannot bring his own salt or his own wood. That he can't bring. In 3 places they would store the salt. That means that means not applying salt. It means there are 3 storage places in the temple for the salt. Where? Bilishkara melach, in the salt room. Okay, obviously. Val gabe kevesh, on top of the kevesh, means like right next to the kevesh. As they would go up to the kevesh, there's a place, a stand there where they have salt. Uvroshosho mizbeach, and at the top of the mizbeach, basically where the kevesh meets the mizbeach, another depository or receptacle with salt in it. In this salt room, that's where they would salt the hides of the kachim. That means not just regular salting. This means it's beginning of processing. They would take the hides of the animals and turn them into leather and other things that they use the hides for. So the basic process involves salt. Why would you take the hide and salt it right away? Still the base of mikdash. That's when the kohanim would start salting them already. Why? Because it comes from an animal. An animal skin is going to rot unless you start processing it. So the first process of the ibud, as they call it, the tanning process. Tanning is disgusting, by the way. It involves very bad smells. Because I'll say it's the worst smelling thing. The borski. Borsi or Bursky? Now I forget. Okay. By the way, that's considered like one of the worst jobs you could get. And the Kohanim were involved in this. So obviously they do that all the disgusting part in the base of mikdash, but the first thing they do is they rinse it and salt it, the most basic preservation, and then they take it out of the base of mikdash. Why? Molchina Evarim. That's when they were getting ready to bring the pieces of the korban up to the altar. That's where they'd salt them. Uvrosho shom mizbeach, and at the top of mizbeach, molchina kometz v'alavona. That's where they would salt the kometz, the part of the mincha, and the lavona. That's the frankincense they put with the kometz. Umenachos on nisrafos, or menachos that were burned. A minchas kohen. A kohen brings a mincha. It's not just the kometz is burned; the entire mincha is burned. Okay, kohanim. None of the mincha of a kohen is eaten. The olas ha'of. Olas ha'of is a bird that basically the entire bird's going to be burned. So they would say, put the bird into salt, give it salted, give it a good salting, and then burn on mizbeach. And I guess that brings us to the end. There's something here we have to talk about. This whole thing about no bringing eitzim. It says a person eitzim brings tzibur, so a person can't bring eitzim. Wait a second, trailer for next week. What about korban eitzim? There are certain families that got to bring the eitzim. Doesn't this contradict? No, it's not a contradiction. We'll see that, I guess, next week. So God willing, we close with the prayer that we put these halachas into practical use as soon as possible. Amen.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.